Good morning, everyone. Microphone check. Screen check. Looks like everything's working correctly here. Good, good, good. All right. Welcome, welcome. Hopefully everyone has been able to rest up, get ready for the day ahead and all that fun stuff. As always, before we jump on the left side of the screen there, make sure to read through the Live Trader Morning Prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that is inside there. Just a quick note for you all before we jump on in. Please keep in mind that the YouTube broadcast side of things does have between a 5 and 30 second delay, depending on where you're logging in from. That can definitely impact the timeliness of what I may be talking about at any given moment. Also, just wanted to give a quick second for a shout out to the latest members that joined overnight, last night, this morning, etc. Thank you so much for the support. I'm pumped to have you on the SSFTG family. If you aren't a member yet, you do have a few different options available to check out that you can use to further your trading education and career. Here on YouTube, you can check out the join button below the stream. YouTube family gain access to the extended hours trading room, which continues the morning room, usually until 10:30, 11 o'clock, whenever we end. Of course, along with that, every member also gains permanent access to the Discord chat server, and of course, you get that awesome badge next to your name here on YouTube to show your support, which always looks really cool. To understand our trading approach and kind of understand what I'm doing here every day in the room, look no further than the Day Trading Academy. This is no short PDF guide that you're going to finish in an afternoon. That's not how it works. This is a very long, extensive course, 19 plus hours of video course material, not including the study material, the homework, the review, everything else. There's a lot to it, so you better tuck in if you're going to be going the DTA route. And then, of course, along with everything else, VIPs, that's the next step. The big Mac Daddies, the VIPs. VIPs have exclusive access, permanent access, to our non-delayed stream, covering the entire morning session from 9 until we end the day, to ensure that you're on the fastest connection possible, as well as just not to miss any beats along the way. Alongside that, VIPs also have access to our monthly VIP webinars. There's one coming up later this month. Private VIP events, one-on-one scheduling access, all kinds of cool stuff. So whether you're here for the very first time or you're a seasoned VIP veteran over on the Zoom stream, welcome. I'm glad to have you trading alongside with me today. Take a look at these crazy markets of ours, see what's going on. Let's take a look at some news as well. Today, remember, we did have a holiday on Monday, so all the news kind of got shifted a little bit, so that will throw things off just a touch. Don't forget to grab your morning DP levels. Side note, very obviously, there's the DP for the NASDAQ just doesn't fit right now. I think it's safe to say that it's had enough volatility to kind of deviate away from this. And this will happen from time to time when the market goes really slow, and then really fast, and then really slow, and then really fast. The DPs, just overall, the stats of them can't really keep up. But there are a few things you can do with these. Obviously, you just to keep extending out, but I don't want a trillion lines all over my screen. So what you can do is, because each of these are variations of 0.5, you can simply just times this by 2, so it would be 28.4. And see how that looks across the board and see if that fits a little bit better. And if that doesn't fit, then add another half to it and just keep going until you get the one that actually fits a little bit more realistically. Luckily, we don't have to do that very often, but this is one of those times that we're probably going to have to do that. So with that in mind, let me get my spreadsheet open real quick here. It's not the one that I wanted. Excuse me. All right. So instead of 14.2, let's make this 28.4. Let's see if that looks a little bit better. Hang on one second. We're still kind of out of bounds. Okay. Let's times the whole thing by 4, and let's just go a full monster, a monster deviation. That means that this would be at 13,563.9. There we go. That looks a little bit better. So modifying it just a little bit so that this value, just for today, because obviously this is massively out of whack right now, is X that out and use this instead. It's going to be 113.6. Actually, hang on one second. Let me grab a screenshot of the levels, since this is Oh. Let me get my screenshot tool open first. There we go. All right. Let me get that uploaded in Discord chat and YouTube chat for you guys. Once this thing actually uploads. Has anyone else been having issues with Lightshot? Lightshot, the screen capture utility, just continuously fails to upload screenshots now. Like, it just never works anymore. I have to go back to good old Giazzo. For God's sake, how long is this going to take? All right, well, eventually that screenshot will upload, but I've got those, I'll post those for you in Discord chat once the screenshot finally uploads. But that is a modified level. The DP size for today on the NQ is going to be 113.6. So just keep that in mind for today. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's take a look at the news. I'm still waiting for that screenshot to upload. This is ridiculous. There we go. Good Lord. All right. There is the screenshot of the NQ levels for today. That way you've got those. Oops. I don't know if it's actually going to load up or how long it's going to take because obviously their server is not working very well. But it should pop up in a little bit. Anyway, looking at the news, at 8:30 earlier this morning, we had the initial jobless claims came out better than expected, 385 versus 390. Not a huge difference, only 5,000. But better than expected is better. We'll take it. Going on for the rest of the morning session, we've got some medium news announcements at 9:45. Not a whole lot going on there until we get to 10 o'clock. The first batch of big news for today's 10 o'clock ISM non-manufacturing PMI for May. The forecast is 63. Previous was 62.7. Remember, Monday was a holiday like we were talking about, so that means that crude oil inventories are today, but they are today at 11 o'clock. They're a little bit later. The forecast is negative 2.443 million, and if we look yesterday at the API report, the API report tells us negative 5.36 million is what we should expect. So given that it is a negative 5.36 million on the API, and we look at today forecasting a negative 2.443, I think it's fair to say we're probably going to be coming out with a bullish number of some description. Usually going to be closer to the API number, but somewhere around negative 2 to negative 5 would be expected. If it comes outside of that, then that might throw things off a little bit. But that's really about all we've got on the news calendar until later this afternoon. 12:30, we have FOMC member Bostic speaking, 13:50, FOMC member Harker speaking, and 15:05, FOMC member Quarles speaking. Not really much else, though. So 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, we've got some news. Keep our eyes open for that. All right. Excuse me. Looking across the board here. The NASDAQ. I mean, this is kind of coming to fruition of what we were talking about yesterday, right? The big concern is that we had that really nasty, vicious little pop above the top that failed almost immediately down. And I mean, yeah, we did see sellers try to reject down, but then they had another trap on the bottom. So we were kind of in this fist fight of the sellers trying to slam down and the buyers trying to push up, but the buyers really weren't getting the job done. And the sellers were still progressively making at least new lower lows, kind of. Not by much, but at least they were kind of getting the job done. And then we started ending up going into a megaphone. With the megaphone, you expect to see them cycle off of the top and then go down to the bottom, but they missed the top and ended the day yesterday rolling into today where we're already way the heck down here. So although it was kind of hard to trade off of because it really didn't give you a signal, in hindsight, that does show us that they missed the top with an undershoot and are now overshooting the bottom. This could also be an equalization of the wider trend down here, which we might still be looking to dig out to around that negative 13,450. Could be a fantastic little wedge base down there. Got a ways to go until that happens, but right now it's fairly obvious that the sellers are, at least in the short term, winning the fight. If we go from the top to the base of this higher low, we can see that buyers did transition that POC on the bottom side. And we can see that buyers tried transitioning back to the upside, and when they tried getting that move to go, they failed that new high, and that's where it went game over. Shifted all the way back down. We cycled back underneath the POC. You can see they tried defending it for a little bit this morning, and, well, they gave up the ghost. Slid all the way down to the lows. Game over. So, on this slide to the downside, it's very obvious that we are progressively moving lower, and we're probably gunning for a measured leg of some description. Something along the lines of this. Now, the problem with that for us is that most of the fun happened in the Euro session, and we're kind of coming in after that objective has been completed. That doesn't mean that the downside has to finish by any means, but it does mean that we might have a little bit more difficulty. It's probably not going to be as easy of a move down as it was back here, unfortunately. Also, I was playing devil's advocate here as far as the like a channel. Whew, man, that's close. All right, we got a few things lining up, that's for sure. Zooming way out, obviously we can see we've got a nice rotation off of the L5 at the base and a nice pop to the upside. Typically off of L5s you expect an L2. They kind of had the L2 back here, although I think strictly speaking, it missed. They might be gunning for that deeper L2, and look what else lines up down here. Got the L2 pocket right inside there. Let's see how many other things we can stack up in here. I'm sure there's a POC from this previous drop lower. Oh yeah, remember? Got a lot of things stacking up in this zone down here to see if the market wants to pull back. This is that zone that we've been watching for the last week. It just hasn't actually pulled back yet. We might get a shot. Hey. Anyway, over on the S&P, getting a little bit of a heavier pullback here as well. It makes sense. As far as the S&P goes, we have the similar continuation movement to the upside, a nice L5 dip. L5s typically rotate off of L2s, and we haven't had that yet. The important part to consider when we're looking at the S&P. So for the S&P's perspective, the L2 is naked. That means that it's a prime area of interest to find some support to come out of. Now, we might also have some kind of a wedge or a channel low or something to go off of. It looks like, if anything, out of all of them, the S&P might have actually given up that channel. Yep, perfect bounce. So you can see we're already kind of, a lot of the fun's already happened, but if we can kind of skip sideways and tag it right there, that'd be fantastic. Around the 62s, 63s. That's going to be the hot spot. Almost a guarantee there's a POC back here. Yeah, like right in the middle of the L2. Perfect. All right. BTFD it is on the indexes. Over on gold, we've got a nice continuation to the downside. Very aggressive momentum lower. And looking from the move down, we are in a territory that could be potentially looking for that 1.5 extension. We're not quite there yet. It's got to break down below like 75.2 or so to actually kind of finish the job. But if we start getting down to this point, that means that we have a 1 to 1.5 to potentially a AB equals CD equals EF. We're looking for that third leg down over here. It's very early to say so, but if we start pushing underneath this 75.2 or at least hitting it, then we know that we've accomplished that goal. We've already surpassed the measured leg to the downside. We could be looking for maybe a larger value pullback like we had back here. That was a 1.64% pullback. If we look at where we are at the moment, it's a 2.19. 1.64 times 2. I mean, we've got man, we got a ways to go until we start hitting those. That would be at like a -2 DP, way the heck down here in the 1850s, which, don't get me wrong, would be an absolutely incredible zone for buyers to stack in. Man, if we hit that today, though, it's going to feel like you're trying to catch the javelin as it's coming down at the Olympic Games, you know? Jeez. Just be careful. Definitely a knife screaming through the sky there. Over on crude, it is inventory day. I mean, you know, crude oil inventory day, we're expecting a bullish number, but the market's been going up for the past week. Realistically, what would make a lot of sense is to see this miss on the highs using a bull number, right? Seeing the market go bearish all morning for the buyers to be building in. They don't want to buy way the heck up here. It doesn't make any sense. So what they're going to be looking to do is buying on the dip, buying back where there was previous zones of value. If we look backward, there was that giant flush to the downside, but the market reversed it all the way back up again. And if we look at where they did it, they didn't shift the POC, but they were not shy about the volume down there. And that's one of the things we were talking about yesterday on Crude, and one of the characteristics of Crude. They're not shy about volume when they're interested. And it's very obvious that there was interest. So with that defense to the upside and the bulls bouncing all the way back up to a new high, they're going to be looking to buy that next pullback. And where's the POC? Right here. Where are we finding support? Right there. So if the buyers do want to show up, it's early. It's very early because this is a strong leg down. But they've got a shot for a higher low. But think of how nice it would be to get a two-legged correction down, right back to that previous area of value down there where they tried to get the POC at the negative half DP, and then get that bullish news to scream this thing to the upside. Perfect scenario. Usually doesn't happen, but it is something to keep our eyes on. Over on the euro. Oh man, the euro isn't looking much better. We had that V bottom, and it looked like they've really had some juice to try to get this thing to the upside, but well, they ran into that resistance. They couldn't get the job done and fell flat on their face. This was very likely a surprise move. I doubt many buyers were expecting a failure there, and you can see a very extensive leg to the downside. And a lot of the surprise leg, the impulse leg, will likely be derived off of this one. So if we're looking for a measurement leg, that would be the one to do it off of. And we haven't quite hit that yet if we're going off the lower high. If we're going off of the actual swing, we're hitting it now. Like, this is the spot. Again, the Euro session seems to have had all of the fun. Over on Bitcoin, nice continuation to the upside. No real break out above 40,000 or any big levels. Just kind of continuing this bullish trend higher. All things considered, I mean, it just looks like a pretty standard, healthy trend, and it just keeps going. So the way that this looks at the moment, top of the channel is next. But this just above 40,000, like 40,500 or so. It's also the plus 0.5 DP up at 40,407. And also all of those major swing highs from back here. So there's a lot of resistance up here in the 40,000s, not to mention a big round number. We'll see if they can make it up to that point. Looking from a cyclical standpoint, from the lows, we've got an L4 that rotated up. L4s typically hold L1s. They did. They held an L1. They continued that trend for another L1. And then finally got a two-legged correction back to not L2, L3. L3 is a bit of a problem. That shows some confusion. Like, ooh, wait a minute. Like, what? If this was actually a reversal breaking above this swing high, why did it go all the way down to L3? It obviously found support there. Like, they weren't shy about finding support there. But it is a bit of a concern when it gets back up to these highs. Is this going to just chop all the way back down again? Here's the good thing. It didn't. So we do have more confirmation for that bullish trend, which means that we have held an L3. We continue up, we've now got an L1. If bulls are going to maintain this bullish strength, L1s begin at 38,444.44, and a little bit lower at 37,950, we'll just say 37,970, bottom of the channel. Obvious concern here for Bitcoin is that we haven't made it to the top of the channel, so if it starts pulling back down here, showing support there is very strong, but if it breaks through, it could be an undershoot into an overshoot, and that would lead to another L3. More confusion, which further kind of exemplifies the problem back here, didn't actually alleviate. So the buyers need to keep this thing going. Over on Ethereum, oh man, what a disgusting chart. I mean, we still haven't made the new high. That's what everybody's waiting for. Break the high. That's all it needs to do is just break the high. Hasn't done it yet. They're trying, but it's still not going. Maybe a bull channel to the upside, maybe a bull wedge to the upside. I mean, either way, we need to get above this 2,900, and it still hasn't. It's a bit of a concern. We haven't seen any necessary signs of failure or like lower highs or sideways, maybe a little bit, but I mean, if anything, the way that this is looking at the moment just looks like it might need a deeper pullback before the continuation back up to 3,000. If that pullback fails with another lower high, then it's probably game over, and we might very quickly see 2,000 again. But as it stands right now, the bulls, they've got some work to do. But they're looking okay. As we go into the US, or the Asian session into Euro session rather, we have a very obvious breakdown lower, and it's not really, it's not really hanging out too much here. They broke down underneath the moving average cluster and just went screaming lower. We do have the Asian session to Euro session down stacked, but the distances here are incredible. Man, where do we even begin? Looking from the top, I suppose we've got an L3, maybe confusion, but not after that. L2 breakdown. I mean, did they even hit an L1? Not even. Just all the way down. Oh, they did finally get the L1 right there. That was it. It was all she wrote. Game over. Jeez. Well, obviously we do have some L1s holding on the way down, and sellers will continue to try to hold these L1s. And if we see some bullish failures, there'll be a definitive reason to want to see this keep going to the downside. Very obvious. But remember, from the bigger picture here, we did complete some objectives on the 15-minute chart. Now, on the daily, zooming way, way out, and actually let me zoom in on this way out, we're running into some problems up here. Remember that earlier point that we were talking about, that L1? The buyers were so aggressively buying that L1, and then when it broke down, they held that area, and the big concerning point that the market had to break through was right there. This isn't helping. This is making it very difficult. It doesn't mean that the buyers can't get this going to the upside, but look at the responses so far off of this area. Right? Let me get rid of all these arrows here. So far, since we've tested it, from the physical test, or retest, I guess in this case, we have one bull bar, two bull bars, one bear bar, two bear bars, three bear bars, four bear bars, three bull bars, five bear bars. So there's a heavy difference in terms of who's controlling the market when it hits this area. The sellers seem to push back pretty aggressively, and that's a concern, right? Because from that perspective, that is where, when we've been talking about this for a while, swing shorts will be selling in here because their stops can be above the highs, but their targets are down here in the L4s. Very, very nice risk versus reward. So shorts are still building in here. I mean, we're talking months out. And there are some other concerns as well, like the January effect, which was bullish. The downweighted POC with a higher low, which still shows support. Even if it does go down further, I'm still expecting it to be bullish in the end. But we've got so many factors that are telling us that we need to be careful if we're bulls here, because we have the POC shift on the top. We have the L1, which failed and is continuing to hold as resistance. And the market hasn't even come back to retest the POC, and we're already seeing heavy selling. There's some definite concerns here. Now, if this heavy selling, which will probably take place for the majority of today, fails and then rips all the way back up, then we'd be in twin reversal territory, and we're probably going to break above 14,000. This might end up being a giant wick. There's still 7.5 hours left. We'll see. But right now, it's looking challenging if you're a bull. Over on the 60-minute, we've got that POC shift. This isn't a surprise, and we can see, I mean, this is like literally the best retest I think I've seen in a while. Remember we were talking about that POC shift and how nerve-wracking it was after that? Look where it came back to. I mean, it's disgusting how well that held on the resistance side. Like, it closed above it once. It's ridiculous. And then immediately failed back down. There's a significant amount of resistance that showed up there. Now, here's the concern. We did land directly on that measured move that we were talking about before. That's a problem. If the bulls are going to take this back up, this is the point where they're going to try to get that V bottom. And the NASDAQ is no shy neighbor to a V bottom. Cough, cough, there's one there. Cough, cough, there's one there. Cough, cough, there's one there. They're all over the place. The NASDAQ loves V bottoms, especially V bottoms. It seems to respond very aggressively to those types of moves. So if this starts pushing back to the upside, we've had a two-legged correction back down. The bulls have been waiting for this pullback. They'll be looking for zones of interest, but you can feel how much of a tipping point this is. Because if the bulls cannot hold their support here, backing off into this VVP, and realistically, you know, they did fill that VVP in. If they can't hold here and we don't see that response back up, That's a huge problem because there is a wide open door all the way down. There was really no definitive point of control inside here. And that causes a lot of concern that the market may want to go back to the next most logical points of interest, which doesn't happen until 13,300. The next one below that's going to be down at 13,200. The only other point of confluence that we have is right here, just underneath the current low at around 500 or just under. So if they start losing those 500s, 475s, yikes. This could get nasty real fast. The 15-minute chart, obviously incredibly bearish to the downside. That POC got stacked in the middle, and we now have a very aggressive push to the downside. This very likely surprised a lot of traders. Are looking for that two-legged move down, and that two-legged move might happen from here. So we'll see. All right, we've got the open right around the corner here in 1 minute. 928 really didn't do much, honestly. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more, if I'm totally honest, but... $30 seconds right around the corner to the open. We'll see if market wants to get something going here. Sellers are definitively pressuring to the downside off the top of this L1, and this is also where the earlier sellers came in. If we look at the overall POC move, obviously the volume is going to change drastically here in a second. But currently the POC is top weighted at 53.50, so pre-market sellers are trying to get this to go down. We'll see what happens at the open. It's the only thing that drives me nuts when you take a pre-market trade on an RTH chart. You get this stupid arrow in the middle of nowhere. Drives me nuts. Zoom in a little bit on the S&P. Obviously a big gap to the downside. NASDAQ really hasn't shifted much in this area. From the sell side, I mean. Bulls giving it a shot. 553.50 sell side resistance is trying to hold off of this POC into the open. POC shifted up to 52. Careful. That might have been a trap. That's why you wait for candles to close first. Perfect example of why you wait for candles to close first. Especially at the open. Vindictive SOBs they are. See if we can get a cycle back down. POC shifts down again. Very nice bear bar. If they're going to take it, that's the kind of candle that they're going to take it off of. So I don't mind taking a slightly earlier entry here to see if we can get a secondary drive down underneath the 540s. We've got the POC on the right side. It's everything that I want to see happen here. I wouldn't mind seeing if I can get a few more. Ooh, they're shifting the POC again. Got a metric ton of volatility coming in. Big pop above the highs. Let's see if that's the stop run they needed. Nice bull bar back up. I'm going to exit one at a small loss just to reduce sizing a bit. But if we can get this to slide down here, this is a great spot to be in. I want to increase my flexibility here to see if we can get a drive back below the POC. That's a heck of a candle to get the job done. Next objective off there. Keep on going. Beautiful drive. Oh, jeez. We got a POC shift to the downside at 48.75. Break through it. Okay, they got through it. See those buyers give up? Big pop back up. I'm going to use that slide down as an excuse to exit that one because we're probably going to get a pop back up to the 564s. I'd rather see if I can get a slightly more beneficial entry around there. Yep. Nice pop back up into that zone. I'm going to keep it on the light side, though, because I want to see the sellers reject. Oh, jeez. I'm going to jump out. I missed my opportunity to get out. I missed it. It happened so freaking fast. I missed it. It went from, like, plus 20 to 30 ticks all the way back up to, like, gone. Ugh. See if we can crack below this POC again, 555. Got a lot of weight on it. I would love to see the bulls try again. POC shifting in the near term. They're still messing around with it. Bulls trying to come in. Give a nice bear bar back down underneath those POCs and it's game on. That wasn't it. Dope. Nice bear bar off the top, but that obviously messes with things a little bit. That derails the context that was happening at the time. We've got like a one tick new high. Jeez, all these wicks on the bottom. This thing's getting nasty. As soon as the bears sniff weakness, it's game time again. That's really all sellers are waiting for. This market's been smashed so aggressively to the downside that it's going to be hard-pressed to not at least see the sellers try. But remember, NASDAQ plus V bottoms equals besties. Right? They love each other. Ooh, lordy. Getting a little bit whippy here. Remember, this negative half DP is actually a -2. Retesting the POC at 553. Seems like sellers have potentially exited in the short term. Buyers pushing back up. I want to see how the bulls respond to that. Buyers will have almost guaranteed bought above that bull bar. So this bear response back down again could be that transition of power that we like seeing. Oof, they couldn't quite get the job done underneath that low, though. I'm going to take an early entry on this. Yeah, I was going to say, I just can't help myself with that bear bar off the top. It's too nice. Get a little bit of a snap back up to the 5350s. We've got a POC shift. Sellers coming back in off that POC shift. Whoo! Bam! Beautiful drive off of that. Drop the hammer. I was only able to get one on that retest, though. Transition of power. Sellers, if you were able to grab more, though, this thing's a... Buyers are hoping right now. Please come back. I goofed. NASDAQ, please come back. That's what they're all looking for. Fantastic transition of power at 53.50. Textbook. See if sellers want to cycle back up again. We're starting to deviate back below the POC. We've broken below the moving average cluster. First 5 minute on the S&P. Oh, come on. First 5 minute on the S&P. 82. And on the NASDAQ. What a lovely candle this is. Oh, 555. This thing's all about those repetitious numbers today, huh? What was the one earlier? 444. Now we've got 555. Big bear bar back to the downside. Sellers will be looking for a continuation play off of this. It's low-sided, so I'm only going to look for a quick scalp. Nice quick little flush. Nice bear bars keeping the drive going, but it's forcing people to sell super far down. Give me a snapback up above the 40s, maybe? 41s? That's a lot of wick on that last candle. This might not have a chance. Uh-oh. Not a chance to get in that secondary drive. Now we're retesting the previous area where bulls would have gotten in. POC still at the top. What a drive. That transition of power was the last chance you had. If you miss that, it's over. Unless you sold way far down here for quick little scalps and you just held. But, man, that thing just gone. What kind of rotation do we have off of the top? Like barely any pullback. I guess I had an L3. Kind of, sort of. Now we're starting to break decisively through these lows, and we can see profit taking again. We've broken through the potential aggressors on the sell side. Now, if we go back and look at from top to bottom here, you can see the same thing. Profit taking. POC's at the top. Salt in the wound, NASDAQ. Really? And I hope someone was able to stay in that one. I was only able to get one on that quick little pop. What a drive. Fantastic rejection all the way down to a new low. We are starting to deviate away from the moving average a little bit here. If we're looking at the bigger trend, obviously this thing has just gone screaming to the downside. But we do finally, after ages, they did finally pull back. And, oh no, they didn't. They missed the L2. I thought they got the L2. Oh, man. Oh, well, that's actually kind of a good thing, because that means that the next pullback that does happen is more likely to be an L2, so I'd rather wait for a deeper correction. And that's right above all those previous highs. You couldn't ask for a better spot for that to line up, but man, I thought they got it on that 69.75 top. Okay. Crude oil pulling back a little bit further. Remember, the inventory news for crude is expected to be bullish. And the market still hasn't really pulled back after that. Oh, geez, gold has gone past that 1.5 by a lot. All right. But crude oil, I would still really rather see just a little bit further down. S&P's getting close. NASDAQ is resting directly on top of that major zone of support. Do you see that on the 15? Look at where the NASDAQ is. Careful. Definitely not interested in selling too far down. That makes me just a bit nervous. 9:45 is the next batch of news as well. To further add to that, it's not big news, but 9:45 you got the market composite PMI and services PMI. 10 o'clock is the big one. That's the ISM non-manufacturing PMI. Gold on the 15-minute on gold, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bear bars back to back. Yikes. Breaking down to new lows again. Sellers still in the driver's seat. The S&P is continuing to shove the market to the downside. It didn't even retest the 5-minute POC at 82 on the second candle. Just left it in the dust. Starting to see a deeper pullback on the crypto side too. Of course, this pullback could be nothing more than their final attempt to BTFD into the move back up. But what a drive. Screaming to the downside. Bears continuing to get the pressure going here. 1 minute until 9:45. We're down into new low. Remember, this is a massive zone for swing long interest. And I'm talking swing long on like a weekly perspective, like way out there. Buyers are going to be looking to buy into this area to hold on to for a long time. I mean, I guess more the medium term when I say long time, I guess, just to clarify. Because again, remember where we are. This is that kind of last ditch zone. The buyers want to buy into this area because that's the lowest risk that they're going to be able to get. And the lower it gets down into here, as long as it doesn't break underneath this 350s, 400s, the better. But if they start cracking through that, there's going to be some issues. So it's an opportunity for buyers to buy with, you know, an entry box like that as far as risk goes. But the reward is like way back up, not just to here. Like that's the first area, but the secondary area is all the way back up off the screen to 14,000. The smarter way to approach it would be waiting for confirmation rather than just blind buying. We know how the NASDAQ does when you blind buy. It doesn't shy away from ripping your face off either, so just be careful. That's why I like these areas more in the sense of options, because it's a locked-in risk. You know, when you're buying an options contract, I know that if I'm buying it a few weeks out and then the amount that I bought it for, that's my risk. I don't have to worry about it going to negative 40 like on crude oil, you know. And you can even hedge it with I mean, there's so many different things you can do in those areas. Market pulling back a little bit further. As far as this drop to the downside from top to bottom, monster POC cluster at 504. That's really about it. Accumulation down to that point. There's those swing traders. Now, this is how this area is going to play out if they're going to successfully get it to play out. We'll create this POC here, and it probably won't change too much. And what we'll end up seeing here is the market coming back up to that area, higher low, try to go up, maybe even break above it a little bit, maybe a lower low or a higher low, but either way not breaking the low, and then start reversing off of that point. If this 504 is going to be a static point that they reverse from. We're back to this area now. Obviously, I do not want to be a buyer yet. It's very early. S&P is finally pulling back a little bit after that bear slide to the downside. 3 consecutive bear bars to the downside. Nice bear bar, but it seems too good to be true. It's a very obvious rejection off the POC on the lows, but we've just tagged a major objective. I don't know, when they're that obvious, it just... like... I don't know. Is it a trap? Seems like it so far. Gave sellers a better opportunity to get better prices, at least. Nice little dip. Oh, man. Okay, wait, whoa. All right, they popped right above that previous bear bar and rejected straight back down again. I want to see if buyers will take the bait above this bull bar and sell into them for a scalp to the downside. But I want to see a trigger up above them to kind of get them in. A bear bar down might just get sellers involved, though. Oh, I didn't get filled. I hit the ask, but I didn't get a fill. It tapped it, but I couldn't get it. There were too many sellers there. Dang it. I tried selling for that breakdown underneath 90, but I couldn't get a fill. That's frustrating. Well, it's there. It was there. It was a nice... I was hoping they would trigger the bulls to sell into them, but that bear bar back down kind of sealed the deal. I just couldn't get a fill. And off it goes. S&P working on its 4th candle in the sequence now. Ooh, lordy. So if all the DPs are widened out times 4, that means that we're at a negative 4 DP right now, right? Jeez. This thing is way out there. Whoa, 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 wait a minute. What? Ooh, we're getting close. Those 430s, those 448s, man, are we close. $430-ish. 429.75, 430 is the area, but I'm going to make this incredibly huge because it's not necessarily a level that I want to trade off of specifically, but it's something I don't want to lose sight of. Nice continuation so far. I'm going to look for sellers to reject the top of this bear bar. The thing is, I'm not even sure they're going to make it up to that point. I'm going to go a point ahead of it. 71.75. See if they can get that going. Market's very extended away from the moving averages. This might be a signal that it's got to get that deeper pullback. If we're looking at it from the top down, obviously this thing just went beast mode to the downside. But from that high, that was an L5. We rotate down, and sellers are going to be looking for the L2. They haven't gotten it yet. And an L2 lines up perfectly with a retest back at 555 in the 5-minute POC. It's perfect. So from a seller's perspective, sellers are going to be looking at this for a continuation to the downside in a big way. It's just that's really far away right now. Starting to look, given the reversal off the lows and that upside momentum on the S&P, we might be able to get that offset at 72.75 instead. I don't feel like I have to go a point ahead anymore. This is updrafting pretty nicely. From a swing trader's perspective, there is, and that's like an intraday swing trader's perspective. Do have sellers with a potential. For that continuation, which would be at 497.50. So from an intraday swing, meaning a 2-to-1 in the strictest of senses, you've got the short there with the risk just above that previous high and targets at minimum 2-to-1. But I mean, you can see there's plenty of room. You could, I mean, it almost looks like you get about a 4-to-1. S&P tested the entry, no fill. Tested again, no fill. And now it's slid all the way back down again. All right, I've got to cancel the S&P. I didn't get a fill. I should have gone a point ahead of it in hindsight, I guess, huh? It tested the top of it, but I couldn't get a fill. Now, if they want to pop above the highs, I've got to offset a little bit further. 73.75 is the... Ooh, well... Never mind. We've got that little bull bar. I'm okay selling above that bull bar. 72.75 still. Given that I got a no-fill there, though, I would rather deviate above the highs by a point. 73.75 to play it on the side of caution. Nobody likes playing with fire when they have a really high potential of burning you, you know? Sellers are trying to get this to go back down in the NASDAQ, but we're not seeing that POC shift yet. We've got the previous buyers at 504. Now, I don't know if that's changed yet. Still at 504. See if we can get a quick little pop up into these 96s. Beautiful spot for sellers to try to reject back down again. Jumpy area. I'm just going to take the scalp. Oh, the S&P, I didn't even see a hit. I don't know if I got 3 or 4 on that one. I wasn't paying attention. I looked over and it hit the entry point. 73, 75, 73. I got 3 instead of 4 on that one. I hit bid and I thought I put it at 5 ticks, so I moved it up 1 just to be safe. I actually got 3 on that one, so I missed a scalp by a tick, but I was more focused on the NASDAQ at the time. Nice little rejection. Got 3.5 minutes until the news, 10 o'clock. Top of the hour. Lots of stuff happens at 10 o'clock. It's when we also shift over to the extended session for VIPs and members. So feel free to get those last questions in for the morning session. We'll get those covered. This thing's nuts. I mean, swing sellers, again, swings on the short side will be selling here. We've already kind of established that. They're looking for larger objectives to the downside. It kind of feels like it might need a bit of a deeper pullback, and now there's news around the corner. Hey. $903, or $503 rather. $504 was that previous POC. Tested to the tick. Not really seeing any resistance there, though. All right, 2 minutes until news. How to stay in the stream. So there's a couple different ways. We have the extended session, which VIPs have permanent access to at all times. So if you're a VIP on SSFTG, then you have permanent access to the non-delayed version, which is off of YouTube, on a Zoom stream. So it's a direct connection. The other way would be on YouTube. There is a join button right below the stream. And if you join as a member, in the community section, I post every day, usually after the room is done. We do an extended session for SSFTG YouTube members and VIPs that goes on until like 10:30, 11 o'clock. Depends on what's going on. If it's a slower day, we usually do more Q&A. If it's a busy day, then we'll have more scalps. Just kind of depends. So there's a couple different ways. One minute till 10 o'clock. Yeah, no problem. Start of the day, you said transition of power. Are you able to elaborate a bit, please? Yeah. I love that. I love that. What do you want to call that? The terminology or whatever? That's such a cool terminology because it fits. What I'm looking for, effectively, with a transition of power is when we have an area of interest, like a downtrend. So let's just say, as an example, we've got a nice perpetual downtrend working its way lower. When the market's coming back, when the market is moving higher, obviously, if the market's moving higher, there's one of two things or a combination of both, buyers or a lack of sellers, or both. And if that's the case, then realistically, I have to wait for the sellers to come back in. And if they're not showing me a reason to come back in, then I have absolutely zero reason to believe them, right? Why would I want to do anything remotely close to selling if nobody's backing me up, right? I don't have the 20 zeros at the end of my bank account to be the one to start the move. I've got to wait for the other elephants to do it for me, So we've got to kind of come in after the fact, and that's what that transition of power looks to achieve. It waits for that transition where the one side, the buyers or the lack of sellers or whatever it is, has finally ceased. And now they're back on the table and then they're trying to repressure it. You can see that in a lot of different ways, whether it's in volume, in candle structure. You can see it in a lot of different things. The one that we saw today, the bread and butter setup to the downside, was this POC that was building. And if you remember, this POC was building the whole way up. It was here, and then it was here, and then it moved up here, and then it moved up here. And by the time we made this high, the POC really didn't move much off of that. It kind of stayed there. So in this case, this is a transition of power based in volume. But you can also see it based in candle formation too. Volume by no means is the only thing. It's the awesome thing about markets. But we have this new high that tried to go up, and then it went up and made a one tick new top, or might as well have been a one tick new top, and then immediately failed back down again. we're already bearish. I mean, look at the slow moving average. This thing hasn't even stopped angling down at this point, like it was just starting to level out. The trend is so aggressively bearish that sellers are looking for a continuation. But we have to see that transition of power. We've got to see the buyers give up and the sellers come back to the party. The first pullback, we're above all the moving averages. We're making higher highs in the short term, higher lows. The trend in the short is up. So we've got to wait for that to finish. The buyers try coming in once, they fail down to a new low. Okay, maybe this is a second long. I don't think the buyers are done yet. They try coming up again, and then they fail again. Now we know second longs from a price action perspective, a lot of traders will come in on the second time and they'll give up on the third. 3 strikes, you're out. But they don't want to give the first shot because, well, who wants to waste money? So they'll go in on the second shot, right? The second entry. And that's this one right here. And it failed. Immediately failed. Like triggered them in one tick above and then dumped all the way down. Now, at the time, the POC was still here. And you'll notice that red candle closed above it. But a trigger underneath that bear bar is back underneath that volume node. And that's where the sellers are likely to start coming back in again. Now, when I took that entry, I did say, this is early. I'm okay with that because I want to sell a little bit further up. And as soon as I said it, it flashed down into the moving average, so I took profit. When it popped back up, that's the transition. The buyers tried, they've been trying. They just had a new high that failed. They tried once, they tried twice, it failed underneath, came back to the POC cluster to allow them out at break even, and they got out. And they were not shy about getting out. I had literally like 2 milliseconds, and I got one contract, and it was gone. That's the transition of power, and that's why I like hunting those areas when they happen, because they're immediate. You almost have no time, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. But that's what I mean. It's waiting for the sellers to come back into the trend and waiting for the buyers to sidestep, get them out of the way. Like right now, the market keeps going higher. We have not seen the transition of power. They tried to here. Remember, the POC was right there, but when they came back to trying to get back into that area, they failed. And they couldn't roll back down again. There's no transition. And as long as they keep failing that transition, they're going to keep failing. They've got to get back down again. They need that proof. And from a volume perspective, from a candle perspective, then look at triggers in and failures, etc. Same concept. But anyway, that's going to do it for this side on YouTube. For you VIPs, you just got to hang out in the Zoom session. We'll switch over. This time, I promise I won't screw up and pull the stupid and close that one too. And for the YouTube side of things, on this end, I hope you had a great day of trading. For you members, I'll see you on the extended session. You'll be able to find that link in the communities page. So for the rest of you, enjoy. I hope you had a fantastic day of trading, and we will see you all tomorrow morning, all right? Have a good one. We'll talk to y'all later. Thanks.